Now, given that the box office metrics for the Fantastic Four First Steps by both Marvel and Disney is currently sitting at $249 million worldwide, that's global metrics by the way, and whether or not newly released films are going to cut into those box office metrics, that's really up for discussion right now, and also whether or not the box office for Fantastic Four First Steps will be very similar to what Brave New World turned out to be once it actually made its course throughout all theaters, is also another big conversation going on right now. But one thing that's for certain is that Pedro Pascal getting involved and way too involved in politics, it's not really helping the situation at all when it comes to the press tour for the Fantastic Four. This is Mike Zero. Subscribe if you're new and like this video to see future updates. You can also follow me at Mike01. I thank you also very much for the great and kind support. So it's not just Pedro Pascal now. We know Joseph Quinn is getting very political in a very odd, indirect way as well. We talked about this just a couple of hours ago on social media, but what's interesting about Quinn is that he's really beginning to actually follow Pedro Pascal's steps of continuing to go against MAGA Republicans out there and really making things worse and dividing the audience. Now, look, specifically, examining the Fantastic Four in isolation, this is an okay movie. I talked about this days ago, about my overall opinion about the film. As far as I see it, it's a good popcorn movie. It's nothing great. It's not a masterpiece. It's not terrible. It's no Snow White. It's nothing like that. It's just an okay, good movie. That's how I see it. Nothing truly special at all. I came out of this just saying, alright, it's alright. But when looking at Pedro Pascal getting political again, we know that this is not helping the entire image of Marvel and Disney and how they continue to allow him to say these things. Now, with the Walt Disney Company still dealing with Pedro and the backlash connected to the Fantastic Four press tour, one significant development that is now active involves more to do with Pedro Pascal going off about MAGA in the middle of the Fantastic Four press tour and the marketing campaign and the release of the film. Now, Pedro recently delivered the following. I think to me the most hilarious thing going on right now is the fact that MAGA doesn't know how to handle the fact that our film is a wider success than Avengers Endgame and the future is fantastic. The problem that I have, and that I always have with MAGA folks, is that they never even admit when they are wrong, especially when it comes to their argument and debates on what they call wokeism. And look, I am so proud of what Kevin Feige is doing here at Marvel Studios, and what Disney is putting together to continue our efforts with diversity, equity, and inclusion. Typical MAGA Republicans will just immediately label that as some form of an agenda to make an argument or to create a talking point on their end to make them sound logical, when they are just stupid. The problem with MAGA is that they are like a virus, and it can be very hard to quiet down the noise coming from these people, that they have an issue with people that come from different ethnicities to take on popular roles. They like to call that race swapping. I see nothing wrong with that. I mean, look, this is why I defend Rachel Zegler. We are dealing with typical right-wing lunatics that are misogynists and sexists that want nothing to do with evolving our society for the greater good. And as for Fantastic Four, if that's the way MAGA thinks about how Marvel Studios hires the talent, then I don't want your business. Fantastic Four is our stepping stone to unveiling Daddy Doomsday, and you will see just how much of a daddy Dr. Doom is going to be in the next Avengers. Now guys, let me just say one thing about Pedro Pascal. Now look, he is a very insufferable actor. I don't care what anyone else says out there. He may have some acting skills, yes, for sure, but he's an insufferable person. An insufferable actor at that when it comes to promoting films, when it comes to talking about movies or talking about politics especially. He really just is, I think, worse than Rachel Zegler ever was. But what's interesting is the fact that he keeps saying these cringe comments like, what? Saying things like Daddy Doomsday and he's a daddy and that's a daddy. I don't even know what to say anymore about Pedro Pascal saying such crazy things on the press tour, but it's getting worse, especially after what Joseph Quinn said. Now, one thing that he does continue to say about MAGA is that he keeps saying that things like diversity, equity, and inclusion are not an agenda, alright? Now, we know that it's 110% an agenda. We all know this. Disney knows this. They know that they got caught in the act about doing that. That's exactly why, the DOJ was investigating Disney about the whole, doubling down on DEI nonsense and how they got in a lot of trouble with that, by the way, and technically it was a discrimination case for a lot of employees getting rejected offers just because they came from different or specific ethnicities. However, he goes on to continue, MAGA likes to come up with their own terminology for things like woke, race swapping, and gender swapping, and using those terms as a so-called agenda by us. It's associated with so many different things, and it's just all so embarrassing, and I don't want to associate myself as an actor with these people. I will say this, though, that my character, Mr. Fantastic, will be very, very important to the plot for Avengers Doomsday, whether people like that or not. It's not up to you to call those decisions, but Mr. Fantastic is going to be the most important role, I think, in Avengers Doomsday. And no, Reed isn't going to shave his beloved mustache. It's here to stay. I know MAGA doesn't like my mustache, so they are going to have to deal with that. What's great about working with Joseph Quinn is that we both share very similar politics, actually the same political views, and that really made this teamwork and bonding for this film so enjoyable. Now guys, again, there he goes, making things political, doubling down on the fact of what Joseph Quinn said a couple of days ago, how he actually said that, a lot of fascists deserve to be, thrown into space and stuff like that. We all know what he's alluding to, we all know who he's talking about, and how it's getting very political. Pedro goes on to conclude, but as for MAGA Republicans, maybe it's time that you move on from Marvel if you don't like me or you don't like Marvel engaging in your made-up culture wars. And look, there he goes again, saying how Marvel and Disney never engaged in culture wars, and how basically any critic out there calling out Disney's nonsense, well, they're immediately MAGA. That's Pedro Pascal's mindset, right? Look, there's a lot of people both on the left and the right, that's the reality of the situation, that are actually fed up with Disney's nonsense. Now, is the Fantastic Four as woke, quote-unquote, as other films like the Marvels, for example, and other movies that were done before in the past, like Snow White, for example? Absolutely not. Does it have its flaws? Absolutely yes, alright? There are actual flaws in this movie. It's not a great film, it's not a masterpiece, it is in no way near the success of Avengers Endgame, alright? Not even close. When it comes to the story, when it comes to the structure, when it comes to the box office metrics especially, it's nowhere near as close to that. And that's their pitch, right? They keep saying that this is bigger than Avengers Endgame, guys. It's a bigger success than that movie. They're trying their absolute hardest to reel in fans that once walked away from Avengers, or should I say, once walked away from Marvel after the Avengers Endgame movie, and they're trying to get all those people back, right? That's what they're trying to do right now. And there's a lot of Marvel fans, believe it or not, that are waiting this movie out. They're waiting for it to arrive on Disney Plus instead. That's the reality of the situation. Whether it's a good movie or not, people are actually waiting for that. But what's interesting here, yet again, is that he continues to make things political. And that's what I keep saying. If you're an actor, do your job and act. Do your job and promote the film during the press tour properly. Don't get political. And that's all you need to do. Pedro doesn't want to do that. But overall, I would like to hear what you all have to say about this below in the comments, and if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel, and I will catch you guys later.